Hey, welcome to Schupak Sports. I'm Marty Schupak. You are about to see a clinic for baseball and softball coaches and parents, any sort of league presidents or commissioners for kids. If you're coaching kids ages probably 8 to 12 or 13, or I've had people who coach high school and college use a lot of my drills. I'm going to go over them, should run anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes. I'm going to stop halfway and go over a couple of different products. I urge you to stick around because I'm going to tell you how to get an extra 1 and 2 runs per game, a tip that I learned after I coached for about 5 or 6 years, and I stayed at it, investigating this, and it worked, and I'll get to it, but let's get right at it. What I do is, if you're not familiar, I hold up a template of a drill and I try to describe it. Things that come into my head, I just blurt it out, impulsively, things that I remember when I coach. But the first thing, I've been trying to show a few little nuances and different things that I urge you to practice. And I always tell coaches and parents, it's so much more effective if you actually do the actual practical situation rather than tell the player, this is what you do. If you're coaching in the third base box, you want to practice base running situations rather than wait for them to get to third base and tell them, lead off in foul territory, different things like that. But the first thing is, if you see, it's what I call the wild pitch drill. Okay, I'll hold this up close like that. Now I'll describe it. And what I do is this: I set up the infield. And as a coach, I will plant the ball. I tell the catcher, don't look, turn your back, and I'll plant the ball somewhere behind them. I'll step aside. I have a base runner at third base, and then I yell, go. The catcher has to turn around, identify where the ball is, run to it, grab it. The pitcher will cover home, and then he tosses it to him, and I have the base runner run, but I tell the base runner not just to stop like a foot or 2 feet before the base. And what I'm doing is I'm getting the team and the pitchers and catchers, because I will rotate players, getting used to covering home and tossing the ball. What happens sometimes is the pitcher, he will, and it's human nature to do this, he will move his head back and forth to the guy coming at third and looking at the catcher, and then he has to grab the ball tossed and put it down. I want my pitchers to get used to watching the catcher. They could turn and look at him, but I want them to get used to it, where they catch the ball and put it down. It's something you don't want to leave for it to happen in a game. And again, I rotate. Now, this is very important. What I do is this. These little things will win you championships. If, let's say, there's runners at second and third and bases loaded, I always have the second baseman go between the mound and home plate, because a lot of times, I say a lot of times, but sometimes the toss to the pitcher will be wild, go over his head. If there's no one backing up there, there's a runner at second, he'll waltz home and it'll be 2 runs. Backing up will save runs, will win you games, and will win you championships. You have to do it at the right time. Okay, so let's review. As a coach, I plant the ball somewhere behind here. There's a base runner at third. We always have him stop a few feet before. We don't want any injuries. The pitcher will cover home, and the catcher will toss it to him. It's important, too, that the catchers get used to tossing the ball to the pitcher. I've had catchers or seen catchers that will toss the ball too high in the air. So you want to practice it. It's one of those things where you just don't want to tell the pitcher, cover home on a wild pitch. Okay? You practice it, and again, I use the second baseman to back up. If you want to use the first baseman, it's up to you. It's the wild pitch drill. Okay, it's something, again, you don't want to wait for it to happen in a game, because it will happen in a game. The next drill is very similar. Okay, and I call it the overthrow at first base. And all I'm doing is getting my first baseman. I usually only have one or two guys that play first base, getting used to finding the ball wherever I plant it, turning around and throwing it. And what happens a lot of times is his vision is impaired because a lot of times the base runner running, and depending where he picks up the overthrow to first, he can't see the target. I want him to get used to either moving one side or the other so he can see the target. And I want him to get used to throwing the ball to shortstop, and I have the second baseman back up. So this is another similar drill. Again, it's one of those drills where I urge you, don't just wait for it to happen, and you don't have to spend a half hour in the drill. I do it for anywhere from like 4 to 6 minutes, rotate a couple of players. It's the overthrow first base drill. Okay? All right. The next drill, which I do, which if you've seen some of these, I urge you to do it. It doesn't present 100% exactly what happens on a rundown, but it'll give the players an idea that are involved in the drill, throwing the ball. Between first and second, we have a base runner. Between home and third, we have a base runner. They wear a helmet. They have a ball. The fielders have a ball on the go command. They'll throw it back and forth, trying to get the base runner out. I think a better pointing, okay? And it works well. And what I teach my team, two things. The ideal number of throws in a rundown is 0. The second best number is 1 throw. And I also teach them, you want to try to get the base runner in what I call a sprint mode. When they're in a sprint mode, it's so hard for them to stop and change directions. But what this drill is doing, it's getting the fielders used to throwing it back and forth. And again, it's getting them used to getting the base runner into the sprint mode. That's what you want. And again, the ideal number of throws in a rundown is 0. And if they have to throw it once, they throw it once. What I find in youth baseball, when the number of throws is in excess of like 2, bad things happen. All right. And usually the base runner will end up getting an extra base. All right. And the other thing is to keep in mind when a lot of coaches, they don't play scared, but a lot of times in a rundown situation, they'll have the defensive team, their team, he'll just tell them, run the player back to the base he came from. I disagree with that 100%. When you get a player in a rundown, that's God's gift to you as a coach to get a sure out, but you have to practice it. All right. So that's the rundown drill. Okay. Now, when you're doing that, very important. When you're talking about rundowns, one thing you have to practice is a rundown between third and home with your full infield. And this isn't showing a base runner, but there would be a base runner there. But you have to get them to used to throwing the ball back and forth. And it's especially important because the catcher has his equipment on. And you'll see he's not as free. He looks a little clumsier running back and forth. Very important. When there's a rundown between third and home, always have the first baseman come down to back up. Okay? And make sure you have the shortstop back up over here. If there's an overthrow, there's still a possibility that you could get an out. All right, so that's I showed you the rundown drill and the rundown between third base and home. I just want to talk to you about a couple of products, and I'm going to tell you about how you could become a better coach and get an extra 1 to 2 runs per game. But first, I want to talk about this book, Baseball Coaching, a guide for the youth coach and parent. I put a lot of time into it. There's over 300 pictures, over 60 sample practices. I tell coaches and parents, if you don't have the money, don't go out and buy any of my products. I don't want you to spend money you don't have. Go to your library's reference desk and ask them to get it. They'll balk at it because I self-publish my books, but if you insist, they'll end up getting it. But what I've done here too is on this, you'll use this. If your son or daughter is like 7 or 8, you'll use this like for 5 or 6 years. I also urge you to get the ebook version of it, just because what I did is when I list the drills, list the practices, I have over 60 sample practices. I made it so you could click on a particular drill, it'll take you to the explanation. But I urge you all, pick this up, Baseball Coaching, a guide for the youth coach and parent. The other item, and what happened to me when I was coaching, a couple of pictures fell down. When I was coaching, I noticed my teams and a lot of teams were making the same mistakes over and over again, year after year. And I got nuts about it. I just said, this is crazy. So I started making a list, and then I came out with this book. And again, I urge you all young coaches, go to your library, see if they'd pick it up. It's called 44 Baseball Mistakes and Corrections. What I did is I took the top mistakes that happen year after year, and I put in the resolution, how to correct the mistakes. Again, these are mistakes that always came up, whether it's an outfielder holding the ball too long or not calling for it. I have different things about how to correct them. And I'll just point out in the table of contents, like fielding ground balls under the legs, not practicing obstruction or interference, and teaching the players the difference. And I didn't know it when I first started coaching, backing up the wrong way, all these different things. I urge you to put as part of your library, or again, if you don't have the money, do not buy it, go to your local library. The other item I want to mention, and I'm going to put up this for free, I'll put a link on the Schupak Sports website. I learned long ago coaching that if you practice base running, you could actually get an extra 1 to 2 runs per game. And what I did was this. I saw one year I had a team that wasn't that talented. And I had heard a coach in the NFL. I'm a big follower of the NFL. And he told a story about one year he saw that his team wasn't that talented, and he decided to spend half of every practice on special teams. And it happened to work, and they made the playoffs. And I said, you know what? I'm going to focus on base running. And that's what I did. And we ended up actually being in the championship game. We lost it, but it was a wonderful experience for the team. And if you practice base running, I promise you, if there are 8 or 10 teams in your league, most of the other coaches won't be practicing it. You'll have a leg up on them, no pun intended. I'm going to put a link for this. It's free. It'll be on the Schupak Sports YouTube channel. I guess right under where it's appropriate. Base running and bunting drills. You don't have to spend a penny. Just watch it. I have some great tips. I have some great drills to practice base running. Okay, back to the little bit of a clinic. I'm going to go over a couple of fun drills. This is a drill, and don't say my team's too old to do it. You know what? Kids enjoy having fun. I always used the formula where I'd have 2 learning drills and 1 fun drill, and it worked over the years. This is what I call the circle drill. I put the team in a circle. I put a ball out there, and the only rule is they have to throw it to somebody else in the circle. They cannot throw it to the person next to them. They throw a grounder, and I would count out loud the number and how many times I could throw it without anyone having an error. You could make a competition of this too. You could have 2 small circles, have 1 assistant coach at each one. You could also use a big circle and do 2 baseballs. Again, you throw it on the ground. If the kids are really young, use the soft covered ball, and also What I also recommend with the young kids, and you can do it with the older kids, is try this drill without gloves. Okay? I'm a big proponent of that when the kids are young, do as many drills as you could, fielding drills with ground balls without gloves. So that's the circle drill. The next drill, it's just the toss drill where you're at a 45-degree angle. But when I was a young coach, I mistakenly was using hard balls against the fence, and the person in charge of facilities went bananas on me, and he was right. I mean, I just did it. I didn't realize what I was doing. Excuse me. So what I did over the years, or right after that, I developed what I call very simple. I called it a rag ball. I bought a box of rags at one of these home centers, and I wrapped it around with 1 inch and 2-inch masking tape. I used different colors, and I would toss it under, and I keep it in a bucket, and it works great. You could reuse them, and you could retape them. They're fairly safe. You don't want to tape it very taut and tight, okay? Because then you'll get too much bounce back if you're doing a toss drill against the wall. You want to do it fairly loose. There are no sharp edges. Again, this is something you could do on your own. It's going to be in everyone's budget. I highly recommend it. What I would do is every year, I remember around the Christmas vacation with the kids, would sit in front of the TV watching football games, making rag balls for the upcoming season. So do the rag ball and do the toss drill, and I will show you some different toss drills later on, but just one hint. When the kids are older, this is a great drill. I would take blue tape and white tape. I toss two up together, and when they reach their peak, I'd yell out either white or blue, and the player would have to hit the one I yelled out. It's a very good focus and concentration drill. And another one is, I don't want to get into this too much, but sometimes I'd throw two up and I'd yell high or low. If I yell low, they hit the low one. If I yell high, they hit the high one. Another advanced drill is I would toss both of them up and I would yell middle. They'd have to swing the bat in between both of these on their way down, not hitting them. And there's enough space for a bat to fit. So that's a little bonus from this. But do the toss drill. It's a great drill, and use rag balls. All right, on the next one, talking about concentration, which I mentioned, this is a drill where you need 3 people. I call it the concentration drill, where a pitcher will throw the ball to a catcher. And what I'll do is, just like this is blue, I will put like a Sharpie on different baseballs, different colors. The player has to focus and track the ball into the catcher's glove. And when he recognizes the color, he's got to yell it out, hopefully before it reaches the glove. It's a very good concentration and focus drill. Okay. And I think this is the last drill. I've showed you this before. Okay. I believe kids, for whatever reason, they don't move the feet like they should. And an example is this. I see it over and over again, and I saw it when I coach. A lot of times parents will go out and buy their son and daughter like a $250 glove. And they'll think that because they have an expensive glove, if they just stick it out, the ball will automatically go into it. Life doesn't work like that. You can't take somebody off the street and give them the best surgical equipment and he all of a sudden becomes a surgeon. You can't pull someone off the street, give him the best bat made, and all of a sudden he's going to hit home runs. You have to move your feet. And what this drill does is this. I set up 2 cones and I have a bucket of balls. I'll throw ground balls left and right. And the player doesn't necessarily have to catch the ball. He just has to stop it like like a hockey goalie or a soccer goalie. And what I'm trying to do is get players to move their feet and not just reach for the ball. I do this with T-ball players too. And I have a player, this guy backs it up also. Now I mentioned, before I close it out, I just mentioned about buying new gloves. And I'll just tell you a quick story. when I was young, we couldn't really afford a lot of the equipment that my friends were getting. And what I would do is I was lefty, I would inherit a glove from a neighbor upstairs, up the street, and his name was Peter Joseph. Like every few years, he was lefty, he was older than me. It was a great situation. And I carried this on when my kids, I became a parent. Again, we couldn't go out for economic reasons, buy all this gorgeous equipment. I've seen people set up batting cages. And just one interesting thing that I did, instead of buying $150, $250 batting net, I got one of those blue tarps you get at Home Center. I took bungee cords, I attached them to each corner, and I used the rag balls, and we did soft toss, and that tarp was as good as a hitting net. So be creative. If you don't have the budget for a lot of this stuff, don't feel bad if your neighbor set up a batting cage with 2 batting machines. You don't need that. I mean, it'll help, but you could be creative. And what I also tell parents too, if you have young kids, if you get a flyer or knock on doors in your neighborhood with some families that had kids, sons and daughters that played sports, and they moved out of the house, and you ask them, do they have any old baseball equipment, gloves or bats that you're willing to get rid of? And I'll tell you this, if you have not to be a sexist, if you have the mother of the house and you knock on their door, if you hit it right, and I've done this, they will set up a red carpet, lead you into their garage. They'll show you a barrel or a trunk or boxes, and they'll say, help yourself. I've gotten a lot of equipment that way. Okay, so with that, I'm going to close this out. Please, if you want me to continue this, please give me a thumbs up. In fact, I'll count to 3. I want to see those thumbs up. 1, 2, 3. And also, please give me some comments. I want to keep doing this format, and hopefully it helps you out, become a better coach and a better parent. So for Marty Schupak and Schupak Sports, and please subscribe to Schupak Sports. I'll see you at third base. Until next time.